So today I get the privilege of having Dr. Dana McNeil with us again. For those of you who don't know Dana, she is a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified Gottman therapist, as well as the founder of the Relationship Place, a group practice in San Diego that specializes in couples therapy using the Gottman Method. She also hosts the podcast The D Spot, really helping couples and individuals explore modern relationship challenges, which is what we get to dive in today. And today we get to talk about what a gray divorce is. Thank you,
Mm,
Dana, for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. You're such a good host. I'd always look forward to this. So, hi.
Hi. So let's dive in. What is a gray divorce? What does that even mean?
What does it mean? Gray divorce means essentially anyone 50 and older who is going through a divorce. And the reason that it's catching the attention of us therapists is it is off the hook, right? So I have some stats for you. So the trend started between 1990 and 2010. And during that time, we had almost 30% of the divorces were happening in that population. So that already means that it was more significant than other all the other populations of if you think of all the different age groups, that was the highest percentage. Then by 2019 it had grown to 36%, and most of the people that were in that 36%, they had been together for over 20 years,
Wow.
50% of them. By 2023, which is the last of the research that I found, it had tripled, and the age for the ones that were tripling were over 65 years old. And women over 65 years old were divorcing at rates that were quadruple what they had been just a few decades before.
Wow.
So this is a disturbing trend for us because we think of, oh, they're stable. They've been together forever. These couples are solid. These are our grandparents. These are our parents. And yet they are getting divorced at exponentially higher rates than younger clients are.
Wow, that's fascinating. I love kind of the statistics and why is that? Why do you kind of, based on your expertise and working with these couples, what are you seeing that's kind of driving them to at that stage in life, that later stage in life of retirement and kind of that big dream of traveling or whatever the other things, the hobbies that they want to get into and building a life together for so long that now they're just going their separate ways?
There's a lot of reasons. Let's touch on a few of them. One is society has a change of opinion about the ability to get divorced. That's a huge driving force. There's also the driving force that women are making as much money as men are. In fact, some of them are making more. There's even statistic that shows that women are getting higher levels of educations than men are these days. So there's more ability to not have to depend on your stereotypical male partner to take care of you financially. So if we just get that aside, we're also living longer. We expect more from our partners. We think about retirement as that time that we're going to do soul searching and take hobbies together or get political or go on that religious retreat, right? And so we're not just living like we used to until about 60. We're living into our hundreds. And
Right.
so now we're thinking of retirement as this big span of time where we're going to be with this person and we expect a lot more of them. Right. We also have different expectations about what retirement might look like. Maybe we didn't plan well for retirement financially. And so we have different opinions about how we're going to spend our money. Maybe we've been in different careers and there's an age gap, and one of us is ready to retire and the other is like, no, my business is doing well. I don't want to retire. Maybe we have health challenges. Maybe one of us is having some physical illness and I don't know how to handle it. Or my parents have illness and you're not wanting to help me take care of my parents. It's across the board. And by the way, social media is now kicked in and we're connecting with that one that got away from high school or college. And we're having more affairs and more infidelity, or we want different things out of our sex life. And maybe our partner isn't able to or doesn't want to be as sexually active. I wish there was one thing so we could
Right.
solve it, but it is a rainbow of reasons.
Well, it kind of really seems like it does touch into this place where there's this kind of sense of it not being enough or the relationship not meeting what I was hoping for, the fulfillment or dream I envisioned it to be. And then that kind of leads us to searching for whatever that is elsewhere and kind of outside the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we are empty nesters and we didn't do anything other than very adequately be in the business of being in a relationship and didn't tend to our relationship, and now the glue that held us together was our family or the structure of our family, and our kids are not living in the same place anymore. It's not the same world. You don't grow up and like live in the same town in Mayberry as your parents do. You're off in other parts of the world. And so we don't have the same things that are holding us together. And if we didn't spend time working on how to be intimate in both conversation and physicality with each other, we already have cracks that are going to have even more pressure added.
Right. And it's like when that sound relationship house, as we talked about in the Gottman, when it's not as sound, it's kind of wonky because we haven't tended to it, we haven't cared for it. Then it makes it a little easier for us to go to this place of kind of negative comps, as Gottman might talk about, where we compare our partners to imagined others or a different life. And
Yeah.
as that might feel more appealing, that seems like that kind of starts to pull us to consider divorce and consider a life that we hadn't had, and that in this new stage of life that maybe I can take that opportunity to do that. Am I getting it?
Absolutely. Or we realize how much we've dedicated of ourselves to our family and our children or our jobs.
Hmm.
And when something, I'm 55, when I hit 50, I'm like, oh, I know for sure I have less time left on the planet than I did before.
Right.
And what's meaningful to me. And you change your value system and you change how you view what time you have left. And if you don't have a partner that shares that value, and you definitely have a ticking time limit, you start reevaluating a lot of things in your life and including a very fine-tuned comb eye at your partner.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. What One of the things that you and I touched on before we hopped on here is this is a little bit more challenging for couples who are going through a great divorce than a younger couple who divorces after 3 years, 6 years. Why is that?
Oh gosh, I mean, and I don't want to minimize it. Breakup is bad. Nobody feels good about a breakup. And yet, my clients that are coming to me that have been together 20, 30, sometimes 40 years, you grew up together. You were kids together. If you got married when you were 19 and figured out how to build a life together, how to be parents together, how to be grandparents together, how to start a business together, how to have a vacation home, what 401k to choose, how to navigate a mortgage, you've done a lot of your development with this other person, and this sense of we is much more defined than your also with that age generation, it isn't as much of a push to be self-aware and self-identified and have a sense of self. They grew up in generations where it's like we need to do the collective we, and we everything is for the family and is for the group and for making sure that we keep the family intact versus having a strong sense of self. And so if you've never been something other than someone's partner for more of your life than you've been a child, even, you really don't have a sense of who you are without this relationship. And it can be really overwhelming. My clients don't even know what they like. They don't know what food they like. They don't know what hobbies they like. Everything still has the filter of that's what we did.
Mhm. And what are those like? I mean, that feels like such an existential crisis in a way. Like, I don't know who I am. I've kind of devoted so much of myself to my family, to my partner, to the mission or vision we had. And how do clients navigate that?
They're scared. They're
Hmm.
really scared because they don't know what's out there, but they're just so alone and have a sense that if I don't do this, I will have regret. And I don't know what the next step looks like is, but I feel so dead inside. I feel like I've sort of just been walking on this treadmill for years and years and years. And so even feeling pain feels like a different experience. And I'm open to feeling that pain because that's the only way I figure that maybe I can find out who I truly am at the end of the day. And it's not even I want to look for another partner. I just want to find myself again. So the difference also is that sometimes younger clients are like, I want to find someone that's better suited for me. And my older clients are, I want to find myself because I'm running out of time. And it isn't necessarily that I'm running towards having another relationship. It is often, particularly for my female clients, which is why that, statistic about the women over 65 years old, they're not rushing to get into another relationship. They're rushing to find themselves with the time that they have left.
And just curiosity kind of comes up for me. Why do they have to get out of the relationship to create that space versus kind of more of that differentiation of, okay, hey, sweetheart, we've been together 30 years. I've invested everything in myself and us. I need to kind of go dedicate more time for me, and I'm going to carve out this time. What gets in the way of taking that route versus we got to get divorced because I need a lot more for me? Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
So, in our last podcast with each other, we talked about guilt and shame.
Hmm.
And women experience a lot of guilt and shame when they don't feel like they're taking care of their family responsibilities. And sometimes in relationships, particularly in this age group, this population, we have been identifying with the responsibilities that we have taken on, which is our partner and our children. And once our children are gone, and if we haven't had a close connected relationship with our partner, they feel like a burden that holds my clients back. It doesn't feel like I am just, get creating space and my best friend is going to go create their own space and we're going to connect over dinner. There's still this anchor that's around their neck, which is this responsibility that they've saddled themselves with by design, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes because of the economic, decisions that they've made. Like I said, if we had a traditional stereotypical family from this generation, the male typically made the majority of the money and I stayed home and took care of the family. That job is never going to go away. I'm still going to feel responsible for taking care of the needs of that partner. We've set it up that way. So until I make a decision that I'm letting that job go, which is taking care of that partner, I don't feel like I can give myself that freedom.
So kind of the separation is also getting away from that feeling of responsibility of, I mean, even caretaking for a spouse.
Yes. Yes, I don't. And oftentimes, because of the way it's been set up, that partner takes care of everything for that other person, right? I make sure that that person's laundry is done. I make sure that they get their insurance bills paid. I organize all of our extracurricular life. I take care of our vacation. I pay the bills. I get food into, to the refrigerator. I make sure that they have Christmas presents for their family members. They also want to get rid of that emotional load that they
Of
have
course.
taken on that they didn't even really have an awareness at the beginning that they were doing. And because they have pled with that partner for so many years to be more actively involved in their relationship and to be interested in the emotional load, and they don't really know how to set boundaries sometimes or ask for their needs because it wasn't ever something that anybody encouraged them to do, that they feel just this complete break is the only way to start doing that.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. And so when these clients come to you, do you work with them on exploring kind of that, or you kind of support them because they're like, I'm so closed off. I have no desire to even work on this relationship or do the boundaries. I just need that clean cut. Kind of what does that look
Yeah.
like when you're working with that type of client?
Sometimes it's really panicky and it really breaks your heart because for whatever reason, there's no like blame here. We created this as a unit, but what sometimes happens is they are in the moment where the female partner is like, I am done.
Hmm.
Right? Like, I am done. There's no empathy. There's no compassion. I am burnt out. And the other partner has finally got it. And there's like this panic that's happening, and they'll do anything. And they are completely caught off guard, which feels very surprising to the female partner that's like, I have been telling you. But because they haven't been insisting or setting boundaries in ways that are long lasting or penetratable to that person's understanding of their dynamic that they set up, there's a lot of minimizing or dismissing or sometimes working a little bit but not having consistent follow through.
Hmm.
And so somebody has just gotten to the end of their rope. And so if they don't do this sooner, It really is kind of me just trying to help them walk through almost like discernment counseling in a way. If you're familiar with that, it's like, have we done everything that we can do? Is there willing to be a shift in the responsibilities that we take on? Or are we looking at the financial impact? Because there is a very big financial impact. If I have been someone that's been a stay-at-home parent and my partner has been working for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And we do the typical, well, I'm going to get some kind of spousal support, right? But that partner's only a few years away from retirement. How much spousal support are you really going to get? So sometimes I try to help them look at the financial impact because maybe they're not aware of what's going to happen and see if I can get some traction that way. There's also a lot of pull from sorry, my dog's barking in the background, if you can hear that. There's also a pull from their family. Like the children are really a big part of their lives, right? If they've got grandkids and they travel together on vacations, there is maybe some wiggle room on how this is going to impact their family. But oftentimes they're just so checked out and so done that they're sometimes just coming in to check off the boxes. And it's
Right.
hard.
Yeah, it's kind of like my heart's already so closed off that anything you say or do is not going to work. And it's almost like I've been cut 1,000 times. I've tried to say this, we didn't get through it. It didn't get connected with. I didn't know how to reach you. It didn't land for you. And I am so done of
Yeah.
trying. I don't have it in me anymore. My heart's
Yeah.
walled off. And
Yeah.
that's kind of where some of these people are because there probably were some other patterns that they didn't have the support or go see a Gottman therapist to support them
Yeah.
doing those things differently and kind of dealing with meta emotion mismatches and the ways in which we really have more conflict. And
Or
also,
what's worse is I do a lot of intensives with these clients, right? Because there's so much on the line.
yeah,
And so I'll see this beautiful moment where a partner is doing a stress reducing conversation in a way that's like they're connected and they're present and they're not trying to fix their feelings and they're like acknowledging them. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like a beautiful moment. And the partner's like, see, I knew you could do it all along. You just have chose not to do it. And I'm like, right? And so that almost is like, I feel like we have some hope. And then there's this like, oh, so you were capable of doing it. You just waited until you thought I was checked out. Why wasn't I important enough for you for all these years? I mean, decades
right.
to kind of check in with how I'm doing. And that sometimes makes it worse.
Well, that's the 1,000 cuts. I've been struggling and getting these little paper cuts all along. And now you're seeing the big bleeding wound and you're here, but we've missed all this time, which I also have had a role in, but I'm really upset because I've tried to reach you and you haven't shown up in these ways that I really needed. And now I'm just done. So it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things I want to jump to a little bit, and you named this a few moments ago, is there's a lot at stake.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about kind of retirement, adult children, social networks? I mean, these, like you said, they grew up together. How do they navigate that if they are moving more towards this divorce and separation?
It's hard because just like with any kind of divorce, you need to be able to tell your kids in a way that they can hear it. And it's different when they're a child versus when they're 30, right? Because sometimes they have seen it and they have seen the dynamic happening, and they can be either really supportive or they can be really frustrated because they can almost have gotten a sense that mom is going to continue taking care of them and making sure that they're okay and overcompensating for the things that the family hasn't been doing, right? And so mom can sometimes be triangulated against between the dad and the kids that you've gone with it so long. Why are you changing things now? What's wrong? What's the problem? Why are you making a big deal about it now? Or I totally support you and I see why you need to do this. And sometimes the moms don't know what's going to show up and
Of
they're
course.
have been holding on for so long because they don't want to break up that family structure. They like having the grandkids. They like having family functions. They live for family functions. This is a big part of their life. And they also worry about what they're modeling for their children about when things get hard because they haven't been sharing with their children. And then it just seems like they're making foolish decisions late in life. And so there's a lot of things that come up for our clients. And then some are just like, I don't care. But if they haven't had a realistic sense of what it's going to do to them financially, I notice that one thing that doesn't always go well is my client that's maybe been the one out building the business will just get very logical with them and sort of dismiss them and say, you don't know what things cost. You're not going to be able to handle this on your own. You don't know what financially you're asking for. And because they skip over the emotions and treat that person like it's a business deal, that they lose traction sometimes as well, instead of like investing with the emotions and then maybe bringing up the logical parts. Does that make sense? So it's like they're not talking to each other in each other's language like they haven't been for most of their relationship.
That makes sense. And for the couples who kind of come in and start contemplating that gray divorce and you're doing discernment and or kind of even getting them to discern a little bit and starting to work with them in the intensives, do you find that some of these couples start to kind of pave a new path and find new routes? Can you kind of talk about
Yes.
what that looks like?
I think what I need to see, or what I see as a sign that we're starting to turn, is that sense that very much happens when you're working with an affair couple or a betrayal couple, is that deep empathy
Right.
and compassion for what it's been like for the other person. You cannot show up with any kind of defensiveness if you want to move that person. And once they feel that compassion and they have a game plan in place that shows why this is important, that they haven't received the love that they deserved and that they want to do things differently and they have an emotional connection, it can turn and it can be so beautiful and it can be the beginning of something really amazing. But it's all on the person that's the leaning in, because the leaning out partner really doesn't have anything to lose at this point. So I've got to encourage the leaning in partner to hold hope for the both of them. And yes, you may have things that are upsetting you. Maybe your partner has been withholding sex for the last decade from you because they've been so upset about this and didn't know how to handle it. We can't deal with your grievances until we hold space for the person that's bleeding. And in this case, it's the leading out person. And so if I can get them to both show up and buy in, we can make some beautiful movement into a wonderful life together.
Yeah, I think that's such an important statement for that leaning in partner who wants the relationship to work or wants to fix it, wants to get it back to a different place. Is yes, there's probably gonna be a part of you that has your grievances, your things that haven't been met. But if you start defending or bringing that stuff up, the leaning out partner is just gonna lean out farther,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Whereas if you can try and lean in and connect with, okay, there's a reason they're this hurt. There's a reason they're leaning out this much.
Yeah.
How can I connect with that? How can I understand that? How can I try to see why this feels like the best choice for them and how much pain is here for them? Because then if I could see that and they could feel that I see that and that I get it, then we have a chance of building that second marriage or life after retirement that could be meaningful and rich. Because that's another big thing, right? Now we have a whole new dream we're building. We're new people. We're not working. We're not this other thing.
Yeah.
Who are we? Who am I? And if we're not able to emotionally connect with the pain, there's not going to be an openness to really explore that and build something totally new as well.
Yeah, because it's also that crack that I need so that the person that's leaning out, if I can get the other partner to show I wasn't doing it intentionally, there is overwhelm that comes in being the person that goes out and is the breadwinner, right? And that is also what they have societally been taught. That's how you be responsible. That's how you show
Right.
love. Like that's a dedication to the family that just looks different. And maybe because they were caught up in how do I keep all of us fed and clothed and like a roof over our heads? I wasn't ignoring you. I missed you too. I wanted to spend time with you. You're my best friend. If we can get that to both happen simultaneously, we have like a whole new world of understanding.
Right, which is a lot of what, because of those roles that those partners get stuck in, they don't have these conversations, they don't name these things. And as you
Yeah.
said, if I can get them to touch into that, then I have kind of the material to pave a new path for them.
Yeah.
So, what, so there's a few different areas. There's kind of these couples that do move to divorce, there's the couples who do fight and try to build kind of a new relationship that can flourish, one that it hasn't been. What kind of are kind of healthy steps for that transition? What does that look like?
For the transition where they're trying to create a healthy relationship and
Yeah,
they're
let's
trying
let's
to,
let's touch on that, and then
yes.
let's touch on the other one a little bit too.
So I think that if we look at it from a Gottman perspective and we're talking about the sound relationship house, sometimes we have to tear down the old house and build a new one. And that starts with our foundation of friendship. Because if you're talking about going into our 90s together, we're not going to have a lot of the functioning that we had that kept us going when we were in our younger, right? I need a best friend. I do need that person that when things go wrong, which they're going to go wrong, I need to know that as friends and family members are starting to pass away, that you're going to be my support. As I start to have health issues and I start to have my own challenges of aging, you're not going to go away. That requires a level of vulnerability and respect and kindness and friendship that is what really has to be the foundation of our relationship moving forward. Maybe when we were younger, we depended on hot sex to get us through some rough times. That's probably not going to be as much on the table. So if we don't really come to respect and have a shared vulnerability that's based on friendship and trust, we're not going to have much of a hope. So we really have to buckle that down and start learning about bids for connection and turning towards instead of away and being willing to have stress reducing conversations and being your advocate and not siding with the enemy and all of those things that we work on when we work with clients in the Gottman method, particularly accepting influence. That's such a big deal.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. And what about for the couples who that one partner is just like, I am so closed off. I can't put any effort into this. I need this to be done. How do
Yeah.
you help them, kind of the partner who's just totally done, navigate that? How do you help the partner who's like, this is a total blind side. I didn't see this coming, and now my partner's not even willing to work on it, and they're kind of going through the chaos and their own existential crisis as a result. What does that kind of look like?
What I typically see is also a little bit different than what happens at younger ages. At younger ages, we typically see those couples just sort of go in their own direction. They don't have much connection with their partner. They're working on custody issues with their children. At this age, there seems to be a lot of concern about continuing to be friends because we have a whole life together and we know we are going to see each other. And from my clients that have done it successfully, it's beautiful. They still go on vacations, they bring their new partners, they bring their kids, they bring their grandkids, and they're still doing family events. They might plan Christmas together. They might talk about how they can still stay friends and be in this person's world. Because again, the older that we get, the less people that we have in our life that knew us when we were younger. And this shared experience of growing up together as a couple is really not something that most of my couples want to let go. So they want to find a way, how can I have empathy for what my partner is going through? Yes, I'm clear on the direction I need to go, but it is a softer, often gentler, sort of just like we're just at an uncomfortable bench, which is this divorce. We're going to sit on it together.
Mhm.
So there isn't a lot of anger because anger still implies that there's some passion there. There's more of an indifference about being in the romantic relationship, but not an indifference about having this person still be in your life because you have so many shared memories.
That makes sense. It's like we grew up together, and so I still feel a tie to you, but I also need to cut this other tie for me to kind of build this other life. And so it's like then kind of blending my new self with kind of this old part of me and us to do that separate. And there is ways to still have that family connection, that family involvement. It just looks different.
We totally grew apart. And a lot of my work is helping them decide it's not that you failed. It was successful for the time that you were together, but perhaps it had an expiration date and you guys are growing in different directions. But it certainly doesn't mean our paths can't meet sometimes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's what a lot of us like. We have this idea of marriage is final, or it's like you got to do it all the way through life. And then we do get to these later stages and we're like, this isn't it. This isn't what I've wanted. This isn't the food I thought I bought in a way. And I'm ready for something else. And that part of ourselves that's just so closed off from trying because we might have tried and it just didn't get any traction. We didn't get the support or it didn't get through, just needs something different. And it
Yeah.
makes sense. It's not as might not be as a volatile of a divorce, but it still is a painful kind of process as partners navigate it and try to figure out what's best for them as individuals or as partners as they move forward.
And some of these clients do well with trying separation for a while because sometimes what the leaning out partner needs is to see the other partner being self-sufficient
Mhm.
and having an awareness of all the things that the other partner did for them that made their life easier that maybe didn't feel acknowledged. And so working on a friendship and seeing that partner be more independent or be more proactive or start to take care of that other person in a different way can rekindle this beautiful friendship that can lead to them getting back together as well.
I love that you brought that up because I think for a lot of people as they navigate this stuff, they might be trying to figure this out themselves. What is the path I should do? Should I just separate? Should I just be done? I feel like I'm done. But there's so many different things to look at. And when you have someone such as yourself who can support them and look at the different options and look at the different paths and tune in emotionally to why they're at that stage and what they need, you can then put some options on the table that allow them to explore and see things that could bring them back together before making that very kind of big decision. And I think again, it's for some people it's very understandable that they make that decision, but I think it's really important to have someone in your corner who's going to explore for both partners. Why are we here? Let's explore this. How do we get to this point? Kind of just like we do with a fair recovery. We've got to focus on the hurt. We got to focus on then rebuilding marriage number two and seeing what we can create in navigating that together. And I think that's kind of what I really hear as a therapist that you can offer some of these couples as they navigate that uncharted terrain.
Yeah, it's a big deal, right? And the stakes feel very high. And if you're not a therapist that feels really confident with sitting with ambiguous grief and not having a right answer, that's going to make everybody feel like it's the perfect answer. That's really a skill that working with this kind of situation, you need to have a more seasoned therapist for sure.
That makes perfect sense. Are there any other tips you'd have for these couples who are at this stage, who are contemplating gray divorce, who are kind of even moving through it right now? What would be your suggestion since you have so much experience working with this population?
I think that maybe we have forgotten to ask for our needs because we're so used to feeling like and assuming that they're going to be rejected that asking for your needs and letting the other person know why it's so important to you if they would consider doing it is a nice entry into being friends.
I love that. It's kind of taking that vulnerable risk again, even after years of feeling like it's been ignored, to again though, okay, let me try this one more time in a very direct, very clear way and give a reason of why it's so important to see if it can actually get the connection I'm looking for and then see where that can take us. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for talking about this. I think anyone who's listening, going through a great divorce, Dana is going to be a great resource. Her website, her podcast, the D Spot, is going to go into that as well. And thanks again, Dana, for being here.
Of course. And if you've suffered through my dog in the background, I apologize. There's someone insistently ringing the doorbell just as we got on this podcast. I love that.
Yep. Perfect.